Your Alcohol I.Q is one of the Operation Alert programs from Anheuser-Busch Companies. For additional information about your Alcohol I.Q or our other programs, please contact Anheuser-Busch Companies, Department of Industry and Government Affairs, 1 Bush Place, St. Louis, Missouri, 63118. It's time to test your knowledge about alcohol and responsible drinking. Play along with our panel of celebrities on Your Alcohol I.Q. Elise Beasley of Moonlighting, Patrick Duffy of Dallas, Marla Gibbs of 227, Richard Dysart of L.A. Law, Lisa Hartman of Knott's Landing, Robert Walden of Brothers, Barbara Bosson of Hooperman, Mickey Dolans of The Monkees, and Artie Johnson of Laugh-In. Then check your answers with our panel of experts. Dr. Morris Chaffetz, president of the Health Education Foundation and founding director of the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. Dr. David Olms, physician, psychiatrist, and specialist on the treatment of alcoholism. Augustus Hewlett, president of the Alcohol Policy Council, and Dr. David Pittman, professor of sociology at Washington University in St. Louis and national expert on alcohol research. And now, let's join our hosts, stars of L.A. Law, Jill Eikenberry and Michael Tucker, as we test your Alcohol I.Q.
Thank you. And welcome to Your Alcohol I.Q. Now, what this is a test. It's a chance for all of us to pit our knowledge against celebrities, experts, and our studio audience here today.
The subject is alcohol and drinking, two of today's most talked about, most analyzed, and most emotional subjects.
Drinking alcoholic beverages is part of a balanced lifestyle for millions of Americans. I'm talking about people who drink sensibly, people who know the facts about drinking.
But there is some confusion about drinking. It comes from misinformation about alcohol and its intended use.
We're here today to help you sort out the misinformation, sort out the facts from the fiction, and we'll share some good ideas and strategies you can use as a responsible drinker.
So get ready to join us in the Alcohol I.Q. quiz. Our studio audience just took the quiz and the results are being tabulated now. You at home can take the quiz as we go along if you get a pencil and paper. At the end of our program, we'll total up and see how well you did.
Now, let's get started. Millions of Americans drink socially and sensibly. But we all know some people can drink too much. They get drunk, or they get smashed, or one of 100 other words we use to describe overindulgence. How would you describe it, Dr. Olms?
Well, I think medically, when somebody's had too much to drink, the term we use is intoxicated.
They're inebriated, they're out of control.
Embarrassing, I think. People who are drunk are embarrassing.
Plastered, wiped out, sloshed.
Something that ends with a ZZLED, like wuzzled or drizzled or wuzzled or something like that.
Yes, Elise, it's something like that. But whether we call it drunk, wazzled, or plastered, what exactly causes someone to get drunk? That's our first question, and it's a multiple choice. Get your pencils ready. Does drinking, A, starve the brain of oxygen, B, cause brain cells to go to sleep, C, short-circuit the brain's electrical activity, or D, replace blood and other fluids in the brain? Let's start with the celebrities.
Well, first it runs around and has a little ball and makes you act a fool.
I thought you wanted the molecular neurobiological reason why the alcohol interferes with the transmission of signals across the synapse or something like that.
The alcohol content of the blood reaches a certain percent, and you can no longer metabolize it.
I think when you get drunk that the actual alcohol replaces oxygen or something in the blood. I'm not sure. And so when it goes to the brain, your brain actually becomes oxygen starved in some form or another.
Well, that sounds reasonable, but is it right? What exactly does alcohol do?
It causes intoxication, the high you get by putting brain cells to sleep. And it does that by affecting what we call the cell wall or the membrane around the brain cells. without getting too scientific, it's basically slowly putting brain tissue to sleep. The higher the blood alcohol level, the more brain tissue you've put asleep.
So the correct answer is B. Brain cells go to sleep. And that's the reason we feel drunk.
But obviously, people don't get drunk every time they take a drink, which leads me to our next question. Your body reacts the same way to the same amount of alcohol each time you drink, true or false?
True.
False.
I have no idea.
The answer is false. And by the way, 99% of our audience said false, so let's give them a hand. But as Dr. Morris Chaffetz adds, it's not as simple as that.
If I take a set number of drinks at the White House, I'm going to have a different response if I take the same number of drinks at a fraternity house. Now, I'm the same person, the amount of alcohol I've taken is the same, and what's the difference?
We're not machines. You know, if we were machines and you always knew exactly what amount to put in, and we all know how much our minds affect us, even though, like, one day, one glass of wine might be okay, the next day, you might be too much.
It depends on what's going on with you. Your whole mental attitude, what you've eaten, how your body reacts is different.
Well, I think the way alcohol hits somebody's system is based on a lot of things: how relaxed they are, the mood they're in, what they've had to eat.
Actually, there are so many variables as to how you're going to react to a given amount of alcohol that it really is difficult to predict how you react with a certain amount each time.
So fatigue, food, friends, all kinds of things change the effects of alcohol. The one thing that's for sure, you can't drink the same way under all circumstances.
Boy, I'm telling you, a lot of these things are really surprising. I'm learning a lot. I don't know about anybody else.
Me too.
Yeah.
Audience, are we having fun yet?
I don't know about them, but I know several ways we could have fun. That's not one of them.
Aloha! I'm sure having fun, but not as much as the guy who stole my traveler's check.
Now, some questions about alcohol in your body. Research has shown that most of the alcohol you drink enters your bloodstream through two organs. So the next question is, what are they?
Here's a hint. They're both in your digestive system. Let's go straight to an expert for this one.
Up to 20% of it can go directly from the stomach into the bloodstream, and the rest of it passes into the small intestine before it's absorbed into the bloodstream.
The correct answer is the stomach and the small intestine. But where the alcohol goes is not as important as how fast it gets there. That's because the rate at which alcohol enters the bloodstream determines your tolerance.
Which leads directly to the next question. Let's make this one multiple choice. How do you slow the rate that alcohol enters the blood? A, eat a heavy meal before you drink. B, drink a heavy liquid like milk. C, drink coffee in between alcoholic beverages. Or D, snack as you drink.
I've always heard that caffeine is not a thing to help sober people up anyway. It's an old wives' tale, usually from old wives treating old drunks.
A heavy meal before you drink.
Let's say if you're snacking or eating something that's like starchy, all it does is like act like a sponge. You go,
Coat your stomach with milk.
There's an old Scottish saying, which is, you canna build on a swamp, laddie. Which means before you go drinking, you should have a nice big meal.
A guy that I used to work with said that when he was in the service, because he was so small, and he was drinking with all these big guys, he would drink like a half a quart of cooking oil that would saturate the lining of his stomach and not allow fluids to be absorbed.
Sounds delightful.
Yuck! That sounds horrible. Maybe our experts have some more tasteful advice.
Drinking water with your beverage, if that's diluting the amount of alcohol you have in the glass, is certainly an effective technique for getting less drunk.
If you're on an empty stomach, then you're going to feel the effects more. So eating a meal first might have some beneficial effects, but snacking while drinking is, I think, the preferred way of reducing the effects of alcohol.
Now, that's interesting, actually. I myself like to alternate a glass of water with my drinks at a party, as you remember.
It works.
It helps me cut down. Diluting a drink with water is a good strategy, too, but there are some drinks you wouldn't want to do that to, like beer or a good bottle of wine. So something that always helps is the answer, D, snacking as you drink.
Food in the stomach slows the absorption of alcohol into the blood, and it's the rate of absorption into the blood that makes the difference. Plus, if your hands are busy with a snack, they can't be busy putting that extra drink into your mouth.
Beer, it's got to be chicken wings, or, you're going to not like this, or powdered donuts. I love powdered donuts and beer.
Ah, pasta, Italian food of any kind, pizza.
My favorite snack is beer and sauerbraten. My mother makes a sauerbraten you wouldn't believe it. I got some inside my helmet. It's great for stopping tanks. Phew, that's strong. Ooh.
I'd like the phone number of that guy that eats powdered donuts with beer. He's a little weird. Sometimes it's good to know people like that.
Okay, we know what happens when the alcohol reaches the stomach and the small intestine. But where does it go from there? Does it go A, to the brain, B, the heart, C, the liver, or D, the tongue?
Probably the tongue. Because I always want to drink more, and it's my tongue that's going, I'm having a party in here.
I don't know if it goes to the heart first, but it definitely hits the brain.
Well, then goes to my tongue.
Factually, as far as the path it follows, it will go from the intestine, the small intestine and stomach, to the liver first, then to the heart, where it gets pumped to the rest of the body. But in seconds, it's equally distributed throughout the entire body.
So the answer is C. Alcohol goes from the stomach and the small intestine to the liver.
Since alcohol goes through the digestive system, does that mean that alcohol has food value? Yes or no?
No, I think alcohol's, from what I understand, it's all empty calories, I think they call it.
Probably not. I know it metabolizes as sugar, carbohydrate, I guess.
It has been said for a long time that alcohol has empty calories to it. It certainly does have some sugar and such in it, and that has some caloric value, but it's not particularly nutritional.
So alcohol does have some food value, not much, but some.
Okay, but it has some.
However, those extra calories on top of a normal diet could be too many calories, and we all know what that means. Weight gain.
Yeah, weight gain. Too many cheddar cheese goldfish.
Aloha! I nurture my brain cells with these itty-bitty goldfish. So far, I don't got no complaints. I'm not gonna hurt him. I'm going to take him for a little swim. Swim, fizzy, as fast as you can.
How would you like to see my goldfish? And I suppose my sturgeon would be out of the question. I'm not going to let you see my walnutto. Oh, help.
So now that we've traced alcohol's path into the body, here comes the next question. How does it get out? Let's make this a true or false. As the blood filters through the liver, alcohol is continuously removed. True or false? Jill?
It's true. The liver does remove alcohol from the blood, but there's a limit to how much it can do and how quickly it can do it. So the next question has to do with the rate of removal. How do you pace yourself? Or how much alcohol can the liver comfortably handle? A, 1 drink per hour. B, 2 drinks per hour. C, 1 drink every 2 hours.
Or D, all of the above. Just kidding. Okay, we know it's not D. The answer is A, about 1 drink per hour. Now, there's no standard size for a drink. The only difference is with beer, the amount of alcohol is more diluted than with liquor or wine, so it's absorbed more slowly into the bloodstream.
And the same rule applies to light beers. While they contain fewer calories than regular beer, they still contain about the same amount of alcohol. But regardless of what you drink, the liver must have time to work. If you drink more than 1 drink per hour, your liver just can't process it.
Okay, are we finished with the liver now?
Oh,
Can we
come
move on to the next course, please?
I like liver.
I know you do.
The little bacon,
Yeah, the bacon and onions. Here's another question concerning alcohol in your body. True or false again? Anytime you take an alcoholic drink, it kills brain cells. True or false?
What do you think, audience? Yes? True? How about false?
They're not sure. Let's ask our celebrities and put their brain cells to work. How about our colleague from LA Law?
Oh, Michael, you know my brain.
We certainly think it does sometimes. We think those brain cells must be dead the way they're carrying on.
Does it kill them? I don't know that it kills the brain cells, but it makes them inoperative.
Oh, yes. But then so does life.
I've heard it does. I wouldn't be surprised.
It kills them? I don't know. I don't think it kills them.
Well, our celebrities were divided on that one. What do the experts say?
Actually, there's been a lot of false work on that particular question. Alcohol doesn't actually kill brain cells. There are billions of brain cells.
The only thing that as far as I'm concerned, that kills brain cells are not using them.
So saying that alcohol kills brain cells is apparently another one of those myths attached to drinking. And myths like that have always been with us.
Oh, myth?
Very interesting. But isn't a myth a small moth?
Missing the moth! My brain cells are all right. It's the rest of me that's rotten. Almost.
Now, our next question is bound to heat up the battle of the sexes. And don't hit me like that. That's the battle of the sexes. True or false? A man can generally drink more than a woman without becoming intoxicated.
Probably because he's bigger usually. Men are usually bigger, they have bigger bellies, they can hold more.
I mean, people always assume that women can't drink as much, but it's not that. I think it's everybody's individual tolerance.
No, I don't think it has anything to do with sex. I think it has to do with body weight.
Macho-wise, men would like to think, of course, they can drink more than a truck can haul, but I don't think that's true.
I think as a general rule, since most men are larger than most women, you can make that as a general rule. However, if a woman is large and has a large muscle mass, and the man is short and is fat, that would not hold true. It is more related to size, muscle, and amount of fat than it is sex.
And what does body fat have to do with it? Well, the more body fat you have, the less tolerant you are to alcohol. Surprising, no? Body fat absorbs less alcohol from the bloodstream than muscle. So the less alcohol absorbed, the more alcohol left to go to the brain.
Let's ask that question another way. Do men try to drink more than women?
I think guys at an early age, their first thing is to go out and drink. Girls go out to try to catch the boys. Boys go out to try to get together and drink or smoke or whatever they think the older guys are doing that will make them feel like men.
The typical American male is about 8 years old, driving a big truck with a gun. And that whole drinking macho thing is all in keeping with that, you know.
I think there is a shift in our society as gender differences come along. And I think in time, you will find as many women drinking moderately as they become part of the workaday world as you find men doing it.
In historic times, probably women drank at the same rate as did men. If you went back to early colonial times, when beer was brought over in the Mayflower, for example, it was the appropriate drink.
Here's an interesting fact. An Assyrian tablet from 2000 BC indicates that beer was taken aboard Noah's Ark.
Distilled spirits came to the colonies with the earliest English and Dutch settlers.
And the log of the Mayflower even states that the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock instead of heading south because they ran out of beer. And those little cheddar cheese goldfish.
In the early days of the United States, the Whiskey Rebellion was fought because the distillers didn't want to pay taxes on what they made.
And hundreds of years later, those rebels would have been called bootleggers for the same reason.
Back in colonial America, most of the drinking was distilled spirits. That's the hard stuff. That's whiskey and rum and all that stuff. And for an interesting reason, mainly because of weight and space, beer and wine took up too much room in the wagon. What do you think of that, Michael?
And you know something, Dick? That's the true explanation of the expression on the wagon. I bet you didn't know that.
One of the most important times in the history of alcohol consumption was the era of Prohibition. Just the word evokes vivid images.
Like all the old gangster movies, I mean, they were always around Prohibition and the nightclubs and the gin mills.
When I think of Prohibition, I think of a time when people ran out and got all the alcohol they wanted, but there was absolutely no quality control.
I think Prohibition was probably one of the 4 major mistakes this country has made. You know, 3 wars and Prohibition.
I really don't think Prohibition did anybody any good. It made a lot of people angry at other people. It stirred up a lot of controversy.
And what about our experts?
Then as a psychiatrist, what comes to my mind is when you prohibit something, you make it very enticing to especially young people. Prohibition pretty well proved to be a dismal failure politically. If anything, we had a massive social problem in this country created by it. Generally speaking, to try and prohibit something to make it forbidden fruit is just going to exacerbate or make problems worse.
The next one is multiple choice. During Prohibition, drinking of alcoholic beverages, A, doubled, B, increased slightly, C, stayed the same, D, declined 1/3 to 1/2. The answer is D, declined 1/3 to 1/2.
I'm surprised. I mean, that really is surprising. Maybe it's because of the Untouchables and all those old TV movies, but we all have visions of a speakeasy on every corner and bathtub gin flowing freely. The fact is that during Prohibition, alcohol consumption did decrease, but it certainly didn't go away.
Prohibition created a huge illegal industry in America that included bathtub gin, moonshine, and lots of dangerous, bad booze.
Prohibition was an experiment in legislating attitudes. It didn't work. So what does shape our attitudes as individuals? Let's continue with the quiz. Our first question in this section is an essay question. Who sets our attitudes about drinking?
I think when you're younger, it's whoever you believe, whoever you like, and whatever they say, whatever the group that's popular with you is saying.
A lot of those attitudes are made when we're very, very young.
The most influential should be parental guidance. Unfortunately, we live in a society where it's not as influential as it should be.
I truly think peer pressure, which means that you have to establish again in the home environment the ability of peer pressure to be positive instead of negative.
I think the basic attitudes towards alcoholic beverages are learned within the family unit.
We have to realize that young people really get their basic character, their behavior systems, their value systems, everything that matters for their future life from the time they're born until they're 5 years old. And then they're pretty much set. There can be changes, but that's where they're set.
I think that peer pressure, especially in younger population groups, plays a significant part in alcohol abuse.
Probably the worst thing to do is not to teach the children anything at all about alcohol and the effect of various doses of alcohol on the body.
Let's have some quick true-false questions about attitudes towards drinking. Drinkers from dry homes, that is where there's no alcohol in the home, are less likely to have problems than drinkers from homes where alcohol is used. True or false?
True. Because if they're from a home that is from a dry home, there are some values that are associated with being dry that is being instilled in them.
If you come from a dry home where they've been screaming at you, don't drink, don't, you'll probably go out and drink just to defy them.
They're inquisitive. They have to satisfy the basic thing that makes us different than this croissant, is the curiosity factor, the desire to know. And if you're just told, because I said so, that doesn't cut it.
Mickey and Patrick say false, and 54% of our audience said the same thing, and that's the correct answer. The experts agree, and here's why.
There's some strong evidence that homes where alcohol is really strongly prohibited for whatever reason that children who come from those homes do indeed have a higher incidence of drinking problems later in life.
People from dry backgrounds, as long as they stay within that same religious and cultural system, probably never do begin to drink. The problem comes when they divorce themselves from their religious cultural background. Then they generally reject all of the values, and some of the more tragic cases of alcohol abuse come from this particular background.
Okay, next question. According to studies, responsible drinkers had their first drink at an earlier age than people who do not drink responsibly. True or false?
False. It has nothing to do with when you have it. It has to do with why you have it.
I'd say so. True.
No, false. I don't think it has anything to do with the timing of getting your first drink. I think it has to, again, do with the entire system by which you learn what alcohol is and how to treat it with respect.
Well, our celebrities obviously don't agree, and our audience was divided too. 44% said false, 56% said true. However, our experts do agree.
I think respect for young people produces fewer problems with alcohol and other substances than hysteria and overreaction and keeping them ignorant.
People who've had their first drink at an early age, if that's done in a family setting with family approval, say a little wine or a drink with dinner again, and that's typical of their culture, certainly it would appear that those families have a lower incidence of alcohol problems later in life.
Now, obviously, we're not saying that children should be given alcoholic beverages, but studies indicate if children grow up in an atmosphere of responsible drinking, they're most likely to be responsible drinkers themselves.
One important factor in our perception of alcohol may be advertising. How about it, celebrities? Does advertising affect perceptions about drinking, about responsible drinking? In other words, does advertising make people drink?
I think advertising could influence what you drink. I don't think it can make you drink.
Advertising is very influential, but it's spotty, and you have the choice of being in or out of that influence at any given time.
But mostly I think it's reflective. You know, guys sitting around in bars, drinking beer and laughing and having a good time was around long before television commercials.
The celebrities say no, and so do the experts. Dr. Pittman?
I think it has a very, very negligible impact on the drinking habits of the individual. This is a very contentious area today, as you already know. The advertising does more than anything else. It creates market share for a particular product.
I think that this business of thinking that drinking, advertising has an impact on people's drinking bothers me because it implies that human beings are trained dogs who can respond to a stimulus like Pavlov's dogs began to salivate when he rang a bell. I don't look at human beings that way.
Why don't you ring a bell and see if I salivate? Psst. You want to come to my bunker? We could listen to my Marlene Dietrich records. Dietrich, now she had legs. What happened to yours, my dear?
Falling in love again.
Oh, shut up.
At one time or another, we all find ourselves in situations where there's overindulgence.
Which brings us to our next questions. Suppose you're giving a party and one of your friends has too much to drink and wants to drive home. What should you do? A, don't do anything. You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. B, brew hot coffee. C, call a cab. D, offer your floor to sleep it off.
What about it, celebrities? What would you do? Lisa, if you had an overindulgent guest, would you call him a cab?
I call him a jerk. I call him a cab. Or they could sleep on my floor. Well, depends on who it is. I think call him a cab.
I might give him a cup of coffee, but I don't think that in itself is going to do it. I'll tell you one thing you don't do is you don't leave him alone and say, have fun getting home, pal.
I really think that anybody who lets anyone get in a car from a party, I mean, it's not only their friends and acquaintances' lives that are at stake, but anybody else on the road.
I either make sure they get home under a sober driver or let them sleep.
It's our responsibility as hosts to watch after our guests' well-being. Hot coffee won't really help. Research indicates that the stimulant effect of the caffeine doesn't significantly reduce the depressant effect of alcohol.
Of course, if your guest is having trouble walking, it might be best to offer a place to sleep. But if he's mobile, calling a cab is probably the best answer.
As you might expect, all our experts are very definite on the subject of letting an overindulgent guest drive home.
Don't let them leave on their own. Don't let them drive when they've been drinking and they're intoxicated. That would be a horrible thing to have to live with if you were a host or a hostess and they left and killed themselves or someone else.
The host of a party usually sets the tone for drinking sensibly. And drinking should complement the fun, not constitute the fun.
Having a friend overindulge is less likely if you plan some party strategies.
Which brings us to final exam time. Time to go over what we've learned so far and to call attention to some specific problems.
What you're about to see is a dramatization of a party scene. According to an informal survey of college-aged adults throughout the country, these scenes are unfortunately all too typical and all too irresponsible.
This final question is not here to teach you how to do party drinking games. In fact, the purpose is quite the opposite. We hope, after seeing this segment, you'll know why such activity is extremely dangerous. And as they say on TV, don't attempt to do this at home, and don't let your friends try it either.
Watch for things that aren't right, and list the things you'd change if this was a party you were hosting.
Julie, drink. Hello. Drink. Yeah.
Okay, so let me see, do one more real quick. Come on, let me see, down it. Hey, buddy.
Couple scotches.
Scotches?
Yeah, leave room for a splash there. Just leave room for a splash. Hey, how's it going, Brad?
Drink up, Brad. The more you drink, the more fun we have.
Yeah. He's been here a while.
He's been here too long, actually.
Yesterday, was it?
Yeah, I've been here for a while, too.
Okay.
All righty.
Hey, Greg, come on. Check this out. That's not chugging.
This is chugging.
Great idea.
Brad, don't you think you've had enough to drink tonight?
At least this is a party, and that's what I came here to do.
Listen, why don't I get you some coffee instead of this, okay?
Fine, I'm out of here then.
Brad, hi, Brad. Would you like something to eat?
No, I'm going to the bar.
Sure. No.
Hey, Daniel, I'm gonna buzz out of here. You should give me one for the road, all right?
Bradley, my boy, here's one of my highway specials.
You're not all right.
All right, Daniel, thanks.
There we go. Your turn. All the way down.
You've been ganging up on me all night.
Would you guys like some food?
No, thanks. I'm working on a great hangover.
You know what? I got a really great cure for a hangover.
Hey, do you have any soda? I can't seem to find any.
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Why don't you get a drink like everyone else? Brad, please, for the last time, you're too drunk to drive home.
Please, I'll be all right.
Lisa, it'll be okay. Just let him go. It's
Girls,
fine.
just let the jerk wreck his car. Come on, we're gonna have some fun. Come on.
Okay, we're standing in the audience here, and we've seen that the people at this party were headed for pretty big trouble. So what do you think, folks? What would you have done? We're going to ask some people in the audience, and then you'll get to answer yourselves. How about this gentleman right here? What would you have done?
Well, the most obvious thing was they shouldn't have let that guy drive. I mean, they shouldn't have let him get in that condition in the first place, but it was really stupid to let him get behind the wheel of his car. They should have called him a cab, and that was a really sick joke, I thought.
Absolutely. Jill?
The one guy was looking for soft drinks, and I thought they should have been more available.
You should have had soft drinks available. I thought so, too.
Yes, the host appeared to be drunk, and that seemed to be setting the tone that it was okay for everybody else to get in that condition.
I think that's really important, that the host really sets the tone for a party. And this person was setting a bad one. Jill?
Yes, it appeared that the hostess was attempting to get people to eat, but it seemed like she wasn't having many takers. They were passing up the snacks.
How about this young lady right here? Could you stand up, please?
I think that the chugging games and all of the things where they were throwing quarters into the glasses were just encouraging a lot of irresponsible drinking.
Along that same line, I think the quarters game was dangerous because they could have swallowed the quarters.
This lady right here, please. Would you stand?
Designated drivers. Nowadays, it seems that a lot of parties there are designated drivers, and I didn't see any designated drivers in that segment.
Right. There was nobody that was safe to drive. Thank you.
I got the impression that the bartender was totally an irresponsible person. He was not using any controls, any measurements. And to me, the bartender is the big key on how much you put into a glass or how much you give to people.
That's a great point. He seemed to be pushing more and more rather than sort of limiting it. That's a great point.
Well, I think the hostess was ultimately responsible for what happened to the people after they left, too. And as a hostess, she should know this, because if they get in an accident, she's going to be responsible for that, too, now under some of the laws in the state.
So maybe she should have asked that guy to sleep on the floor somewhere. Well, folks, you've come up with some great comments, and you caught most of the mistakes. But here are a few you missed.
I would encourage limiting the amount of time there is available to drink. For instance, if it's a dinner party, you're going to have some drinks before dinner. Make sure you have some snacks out, some appetizers that can go with the alcohol, and limit that amount of time. You don't need 2 to 3 hours drinking before you sit down to dinner. Limit it to 30 minutes or an hour so that there's less time for people to drink. It's probably a good idea perhaps to withdraw the alcohol before people go home and to leave an hour or so towards the end of a long social event for people to go without any alcohol and have more time to sober up if they've had too much. And then lastly, and this is something I really believe in, as the host, try to make sure you say goodbye to everybody as they're leaving, and make sure you're not letting anybody leave your place intoxicated.
Audience, give yourself a hand. You did very well.
Well, our test is over, but before you congratulate yourself too much, it's grade time. And unfortunately in this game, what you don't know will hurt you. So count the number you got wrong. If you missed 3 or 4, you know the facts about responsible drinking. So throw yourself a party.
If you missed 5 or 6, grab a bowl of cheddar cheese goldfish and look back over the quiz to think about what you got wrong. If you missed 6 to 8, you have a lot to learn about responsible drinking.
And if you missed more than 8, you owe it to yourself and your friends to watch this program again. Our studio audience got an average of 5 wrong, which I think is pretty good. And I hope you did as well or better.
You know, drinking is a part of many people's lives, and it can be an enjoyable part when handled properly. That's what this program has been about, enjoying yourself.
After all, drinking is not an ability. It's a responsibility.
No matter what you do, who you are, what you take, you're always reflecting to the own self-respect. And if you use alcohol in a way that isn't responsible, that makes you drunk, that makes you lose control, you are really saying to yourself and to the rest of the world, I don't care about my dignity, I don't care about my self-respect, I really don't care about me.
Well said, Dr. Chaffetz. Thank you all.
And happy, safe drinking.
For additional information about this subject, please contact Anheuser-Busch Company's Department of Industry and Government Affairs, 1 Bush Place,